Hello friends, Jennifer Pearson here, Thistle Gypsy, and we are now on the suit of wands with the Sacred Sites Tarot. I don't want to close the box or I'll throw the cards around. Sacred Sites Tarot. Out of print, but I don't know, anybody want to pressure them to bring it back into print? I don't think it was even that long ago. That it was in print. But I've been going progressively through the suits. I've got this one that I'm doing here, and then I will have the suit of swords and I'll be done. It has a different 2012 is when this was published, so why it went out of print so quickly is beyond me. But there's a different sacred site on every card, so 78. And I've been going through each of them, learning about them, and that's what I'm sharing here. And I do have a playlist. I have a playlist of all of these, and this deck is going to be my December steady deck. Well, not steady deck, really just my use deck, my deck to get familiar with in the month of December. And so what I expect I'll be doing in December is actually listening to my videos I've been making throughout the year, and it's been quite a labor, but a really, really interesting one, as I've been watching videos on the various sites depicted and learning different things about them. So it's been, the deck has been worthwhile for that, even if I end up deciding it's not very good for reading. It was worthwhile just for this journey that it has taken me on. And I'm glad that I started on watching all of these videos and learning about all of these places way ahead of December because it's taken quite a while. So we are in the suit of wands, and the Ace of Wands is the burning bush. And I think that one is fairly explanatory, as self-explanatory. There are people who now seem, well, they're calling it Mount Sinai in Egypt, is what they're calling it, is Mount Sinai. And there's some sort of controversy going on these days, which I just didn't want to get into about, yeah, the exact location and things of that nature. But again, Moses, the burning bush, Mount Sinai, self-explanatory there. Ace of Wands makes perfect sense to me. The next one is something called the Alchemy Gate, or the Alchemical Gate in Rome. So here it is. Sorry about the glare. Oops, and not getting my positioning right. So this has an interesting story, and I thought maybe this is one of the mythical places, but it's not. There's a place in Rome, in a park, behind a gate. They don't let you go up to it. But all right, so let me get back to the story here. It's been a week or so, probably a couple weeks since this one. So I have written down here, it's a monument to an alchemist during this period. I didn't pay attention to the actual dates, who disappeared and left behind a cryptic formula using alchemical symbols for others who wanted to follow him. So there was this aristocrat had a garden, and this alchemist wanted a plant that was in the garden and supposedly went in there and obtained the plant and then disappeared and left this sheet of cryptic symbols, alchemical symbols, that were supposed to allow people to also disappear and follow him. So the aristocrat decided to create this door, and I think there are other doors in the garden too, but this door that actually has a bunch of alchemical symbols on it. It's like whoever can solve it, it's like a riddle, would be able to disappear like this person did. And so as a Two of Wands, it's an interesting card, since, you know, in the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith, we have somebody looking at the world, you know, from a parapet. And so from like a fortress or some fortified thing, and then thinking about leaving. And this is somebody who made a very stylish exit. Um, and this even is kind of about trying to figure out how somebody else made such an exit before you, you know, because there is something in the Two of Wands that's contemplative. So you're kind of wanting to go where nobody else has gone before, but at the same time, you're trying to create a strategy for it. And so presumably, even if you're going where nobody else has gone before, you would try to prepare yourself as much as possible, right? So that's the alchemical door. It's certainly highly mystical, even if it isn't mythical. So there it is. The next one is, I should read these from the books too. The book is, you know, typical Los Garabeo, isn't terribly helpful. For the Mount Sinai, the Ace of Wands, it says a mountain in Egypt. This is the sacred place where Moses went to receive the tablets with the 10 Commandments. And then the Alchemy Gate, also known as the Magic Portal. It was built in 1600, so there you go, by a nobleman dedicated to occult studies. It is said to hide the secrets of the Philosopher's Stone. I didn't hear anything about that in the things that I watched. Number 3 is the Fortress of Alamut in Iran. This was the fortress of the terrible Hassan-i-Sabah, the old man of the mountain who spread terror with his 7 assassins, Hashashin. And yes, and so here's his high fortress there, people heading toward it. The name Alamut means eagle's nest. So again, for the Three of Wands, normally in a Rider-Waite deck, it's being depicted as somebody at a high place looking down on the ships in the distance. So in that regard, I think that's how it kind of fits the Three of Wands. The assassins or guardians there had an initiation requiring drugs, opium, that supposedly makes them loyal, which was reminding me a lot of the some of the methods of people who, what is it called, human trafficking, where, you know, they abduct somebody, and while they have them restrained and can't defend themselves, can't get away, they shoot them up full of drugs and get them addicted before they let them loose. And then in order to get their fix, they have to keep coming back, an interesting way to get loyalty. But essentially giving them as many pleasures as they can imagine, and somehow sealing their loyalty that way. There was nothing particularly sacred or religious about it. It is a fortress in the service of a single person. So, kind of a strange choice for a sacred sites deck. The Four of Wands is the Forbidden City. So, what does it say? The Forbidden City in Beijing, China, the imperial palace of the Ming and Qing dynasties. This place was forbidden to all those who were not a member of the imperial house. So you had to be one of the selected, and often, if not exclusively, you had to be castrated, I'm pretty sure, if you were male, which didn't prevent people from wanting to be part of it, apparently, because you would live a good life there in terms of comfort and the kind of service that you were providing. So this is the Four of Wands. Now, why it belongs in the suit of Wands is that I learned that it had proved through history to be a lightning magnet. So that was really interesting. So it's made of wood, largely, and it kept getting burned down. It kept getting struck by lightning, and fires were started there. So that's a curious fact about that particular place and why it belongs in the suit of fire. Next, where are we? 5. The Nurages. The Nurages in Sardinia, Italy. So this was supposedly ancient structures. What's it going to tell me about the Nurages? These are stone towers that date back to the second millennium before Christ. So 2000 AD. No, BC, excuse me, before Christ. Symbol of one of the most mysterious Neolithic civilizations of the Mediterranean. I don't know that it's all that mysterious. There isn't much known about it. And so there's been a lot of overlay of questionable theories on them. But generally, it's believed that they were the towers of chieftains and but it was unusual technology for that time, I guess they would say, for that area for that time. And so what did I say about, well, I said this, that I'm not sure why this is in the wands instead of the pentacles. There's nothing particularly fiery about it. They have added something weird on here that had no foundation in anything that I saw. There were no particular rituals associated with them that I recall seeing. What else? The largest one was actually similar to the Five of Pentacles, which is the Palace of Knossos, in that it had very labyrinthine outer, well, even the inside is kind of labyrinthine. And another thing that, usually, so this depicts some strange things, strangely dressed people combating one another. There was nothing in anything that I read about that indicated that there were any sort of weird rituals or competitions or people wearing masks or anything like that. The only competition that I could find was that there's competing theories about them. There's competing ideas about what they represented in the people who built them and why they were built, and there's actually lots of them. But that's the only competition I could find that that would, you know, normally you would, with the Five of Wands, you would have that aspect of sparring or bickering or competition. So number 6 is that Kailash? Mount Kailash, which I've actually, I think, covered in another video. But maybe not, because this is Milarepa. Milarepa or Repa? R-E-P-A. Part of the Himalayas. This is the sacred mountain for Tibetan Buddhism. Many stories attributed to the legendary Milarepa took place here. So maybe it's because he is a celebrated person. This is the mountain that people walk around, that takes 3 days, and your life path is supposedly altered when you go through the high pass. But since, you know, this person is on here, I'm assuming that that's Milarepa, and that then he is the celebrated one in the Six of Wands. And if you think of wands as labors or adventures, then, you know, you do have that long adventure of walking around the mountain, the long walk around the mountain that usually takes 3 days and up to 2 weeks if you're doing prostrations all the way around it, which some people do. All right, so here we are. What is, I don't even remember what this is. Oh, it's the Great Wall. The Great Wall of China. I was wondering, because it's just showing such disaster. I thought maybe this was, I thought, no, we've already covered the walls of Jericho. So this is the Great Wall of China. In the midst of a battle here, it looks like. And there's nothing I could see other than the fact that it is, you know, the traditional card shows somebody standing on high ground, like a hill, and then, you know, having an advantage in that regard. And so certainly the Great Wall of China was that. And in its, I think, later additions were actually up over mountains. There's a lot of it that's actually on plains, but the later additions to it were up over mountains. Sorry if you can hear a lot of emergency sirens. Something is clearly going on the main boulevard that I'm not too far from. So that was it. I mean, a lot of the videos and stuff are all about the engineering of it, etc. And yeah, so it's a very big defensive wall. And that's how it applies to the Seven of Wands, as far as I can see. The Eight of Wands is the Nazca line. Lines. So what it says about the Great Wall here is, according to legend, the slaves who died during its construction are buried inside the wall itself in order to defend it from beyond the grave. I didn't read too much about that, or hear too much about that. I was watching videos. The Nazca lines of Peru, these lines on the Earth's surface are so large as to be visualized only from the air. How and why were they created remains a mystery. And that seems to be true. So from here on out, not completely, but we simply have the reference to deserts and heat as in dry places, as we would see in the suit of Wands in a Rider-Waite-Smith deck. So I take this as essentially lots of lines, kind of like hieroglyphs in the desert. So the Eight of Wands are flying through the air. You have to see these through the air or via the air to really catch the full form of them. And there are all kinds of theories about what they represent, so that them being messages. I don't know that they're good news, as with the Eight of Wands is normally associated with good news. But yeah, since it's normally associated with communication of some kind, this seems to be communication of some kind. Nobody understands it. And it does remain a mystery. Nobody quite gets them. All right. Next, the Nine of Wands. And again, since these are clay warriors, I wondered quite a bit why this wasn't part of the suit of Pentacles. But, I mean, you do have to fire clay, right? So there is that aspect. And then I learned that the Qin Emperor, I think it's Qin, who had this constructed, was known as the Dragon Emperor. So that puts him solidly in the suit of fire. And obviously these are guardians. They're warriors. So that makes sense for the Nine of Wands, right? And a lot of them had to be reconstructed because they were crumbled into pieces. So the 10. 10 was really confusing. So I need to read from the guidebook again, right? This one might be confusing too, just by the image that's on it. So the 9, Mausoleum of the Qin Emperor, Qin, no U in there, Qin, and no G on it. This is the tomb of the Chinese Emperor Qin Shi Huangdi. Terracotta warriors seem to still guard their ancient lord, once the most powerful man in the world. And then we come to St. Patrick's Well, and this is supposed to be Lough Derg in Ireland. So that in itself was confusing because it's called St. Patrick's Well. This is St. Patrick's Well, but it's in Italy. The St. Patrick's Well that's in Ireland is not in Lough Derg, which is a lake. Maybe it's Lough Derg. It's Lough. I don't know how you pronounce it. I can't remember from the videos. I don't know where the St. Patrick's Well, or if there's more than one in Ireland, but it's not, there's no appearance that I could see that it was on the island in Lough Derg. This is in Italy. So, it's so hard to even talk about it when the image on the card is not what the book is referring to at all. Okay, so it says, ignore this image for a second and just think about the island in a lake, an island in the lake in Ireland. This is considered a gateway to the netherworld. Okay, not this, but the one that's in Ireland. The myth narrates that one can contact dead souls through the well. I have no idea if that's true. I didn't find that to be in any of the videos I watched on the Italian well, the Italian St. Patrick's well. And I don't know that I heard about it on the island either. So, about the island. And this is, St. Patrick has some really interesting rituals associated with him. Earlier we had one associated with the mountain that you climb. Where do I have it? Crow Patrick, known as the Wreck. So that was interesting. And now we have St. Patrick's Purgatory, as they called it. And in the guidebook it says a gateway to the netherworld. But I'm not sure that as it was explained in one of the videos by one of the members of the monastery, I believe it was explaining this, that purgatory was the kind of the limbo between death and going on to either heaven or hell. And in purgatory, if you think of purging, purgatory was a time of purification. So when it says St. Patrick's Purgatory, it's essentially St. Patrick's purification is what I got out of it. I'm not Catholic, so I don't know. Anybody can correct me down in the comments. But it's a trial. So the Ten of Wands, there's something appropriate about the Ten of Wands here, except that the things that you have to do. So you go to this island as a pilgrim, and you have to fast for 3 days. You have to go barefoot the entire time. You have to go 24 hours without sleep. And there are 9 stations that you have to pass through. Like there are things you have to circle around and kneel at and pray at. There's the St. Bridget's cross that you have to do 3 things at. And yeah, so there's this whole process that you're going through for these 3 days where you actually stay on the island. But the first experience had to do, I think, with St. Patrick going into a cave. So I don't know if that cave is where they got in the guidebook that some ancestor was contacted or something. I'm not sure where that's coming from. So I'm thinking that maybe this Italian well, you could think of it as the 10th labor, even though it's completely separate. So it gets its name I don't know, I can't remember exactly where it gets, why it took its name from St. Patrick's. well. But it's not quite, yeah. Again, anybody who knows, please put it down in the comments. This well was constructed by somebody who made a retreat to this area during a time of conflict and realized that even though it was a good place to retreat to, that a weakness of it was that there was no water source. It's like up on an outcrop or something, up on a different level. And so they had to create this well. Can't remember if it's like 100 feet or more. And so down at the bottom is the water, and you have to walk down, and then you cross a bridge over the water. So supposedly they would take their donkeys down here, dip their buckets in the water, and then bring, and then along the other side. So it's like a double helix in order to accomplish this, so that it's all one way. You go down and then you come up. You're never walking in the same place twice throughout that circuit. And there's a saying somewhere on this well that says, what nature stinted for provision, in other words, nature would not naturally supply water, application has supplied. So in other words, work has supplied the thing that nature would not provide. So that makes it appropriate for the Ten of Wands. But there was an awful lot of confusion along the way trying to figure that out. And I forgot to put down exactly the connection between this, why it was named after St. Patrick. All right, so here we have the court cards, and the Page of Wands is a city called Ebla. And it's like, what to say about Ebla? For one thing, I have no idea how this illustration came to pass. I mean, it's maybe there was kind of so little known that they just let their imagination, the artist let his imagination run away with him and become highly inventive. Yeah. So this was a city that was lost for a long time, and but was known through references in Egypt and in other places, I believe, and was finally found. And when it was found, there, along with it, so one of the wonders of the desert is how it preserves things, right? 15,000 cuneiform tablets, including tablets that seem to have the sole purpose of acting as translation guides or picture dictionaries or translation dictionaries. So this was a place not only where these things were found, but it was a place of where languages kind of converged. So it makes sense for a page, which a page had the purpose of being a messenger back in the day. And this particular place had a lot to do with language. And it was in the desert. I believe it's Syria. So what does it say? the page, or in low Scarabeo-Dex, the knave. Yep, Ebla, Syria, once prosperous and thriving. Its name means white stone, in reference to the calcareous stones on which the city was constructed. Calcareous, like it's limestone. In any case, so this city was a crossroads for many different lands. It was full, those tablets were full of commercial communication, so it was kind of a, yeah, it was a hub and a crossroads. It said it had a temple to Ishtar, but there was also not much that's sacred about this site. There's, so again, why there's this guy here on this pillar. I don't know, maybe they're trying to give it a sacred aspect that just really wasn't there. I mean, they talked in one of the videos about the various gods that were worshipped there, but it was really a city of learning and commerce, much like, was Timbuktu in here somewhere? You know, where they have all of the old manuscripts, that sort of thing. All right, so I'm going to move this out of here. So the page kind of makes sense, except that it's not very sacred. This maybe should have been the ancient sites. Maybe that's what it should have been called. The ancient sites tarot. So I'll do this. So I have Knight, Queen, King. So the Knight is the Pyramid of Giza, the Great Pyramid. Then this is Heliopolis, also in Egypt. All right, so all kind of related to the desert, although this is in the Delta. And then the Valley of the Kings. And this makes no sense because the Valley of the Kings does not have, this is at, they said at Luxor. So I don't know if I was looking at the wrong Valley of the Kings. Maybe I was. I don't think that I checked that. I'll have to see about what's written in the guidebook. But I don't know why this is the Queen. You know, we have Isis here. And this would have made more sense. It's like this would have made more sense from what I learned, even though it's the Valley of the Kings, if it were the Queen. And then maybe this, the King. So maybe just, I don't know. They're all very mixed up for me. All right. But let's read the guidebook. I'm going to read each of them from the guidebook, and then I'll talk about my own sort of findings about them. Where are they? The Knight. Here. The Pyramid of, and here they're saying Cheops or Cheope or something like that. And here they say the necropolis of Giza, Egypt. So what I was looking at was the Great Pyramid of Khufu, which I think is the more now considered the more common name used for that Cheope, Cheope. And here it says, necropolis of Giza, Egypt. Some researchers believe that this was once a center for initiates of the religion of Osiridae. So Osiris, I assume. I heard nothing about that. Maybe I was looking into the wrong thing and couldn't find anything about this. The Queen. So I'll look, actually. I'll get on my computer here just momentarily, and we'll just type it into Google instead of looking it up on YouTube. You know, I usually am going to YouTube and looking for documentaries on each of these things. So Heliopolis, ancient Egypt. This is where the sacred rites of the god Atum took place. Currently only an obelisk, and so not what you quite see here, but currently, I'll show this card to you more close up here in a minute. Only an obelisk eroded by the sands of the desert remind us of its exact location. So again, this seems to be a fantasy of the artist because the artist didn't have enough to go on. And then the Valley of the Kings at Luxor, near ancient Thebes, today known as Luxor. For a period of 500 years, this was the chosen site of burial for the sovereigns of ancient Egypt. And it is, I did have the right place. There is nothing, again, the artist's fantasy. This represents, this makes some sense, right? We've all seen the camel riders in front of the pyramids. Although, unless, again, I was looking at the wrong pyramids. This is not the Great Pyramid, the one that has this stuff still layered on it. It's not the Great Pyramid. So I could have had the wrong. Let me look. But this, all right, so there's, and when I do this, I can't see what I'm showing the camera anymore. All right, so you see, there supposedly were additional, at least 2, if not additional pillars. So this person seems to have put this back in here. But like, I don't think this technology was even available at the time that is being depicted here, or the time of Heliopolis. And supposedly some of these obelisks, supposedly one of them's in London. So they took some of them, were looted essentially and taken elsewhere, and only one remains. But this whole scene right here is kind of a fantasy. And then there was nothing in what I read that indicated that there was anything above ground, anything, any monuments above ground in the Valley of the Kings. They're all burial sites underground. There's no monument. It's supposed to be, actually, it was supposed to be on the hidden end of things and very well guarded, and you know, they were sealed. All of the glory was underground. So let me see here if I can look up Cheope. Pyramid. Yeah, it is. It's the Great Pyramid. And it's funny how people want to show, and they show the pyramids that give a perspective as though this is the Great Pyramid. But it's, unless the appearance somehow changed, what I was seeing was that it's not the one that has this kind of cap on it. The Great Pyramid actually has a little bit off of the top. And there was zero talk of anything to do with Osiris. It's supposed to be Cheops. Okay. So what did I find? Heliopolis, Heli being the sun, city of the sun. It was supposed to particularly orient toward the rising of the sun. So it's supposed to be oriented toward the rising sun, because, that's where the sun gods are born. So the only way that you could possibly see this, so it's where the gods are born. It's oriented toward the east, where the gods are born. So the only way that I personally could see this as being for a queen is that if the gods are born there, there's some aspect of fertility. It's a stretch. Now here they do have the night, and they are showing the starry sky. So there's the suggestion of Nut there. This appears to be Isis. But this city is dedicated to a tomb. That's like a very early creator god, is how I saw it explained. And and there was a mention of Atum's first two children, the male and female, had some name before the name Nut, and then Nut was born from those two. So, but it's really a stretch. It's really a stretch. However, if we had made, oddly, if we could have made this, even though it's the Valley of the Kings, we could have made this the queen. Because, as it turns out, the first oldest tomb, so the person who initiated those underground burials, was actually a queen, Hatshepsut, or Hatshepsut, or Hatshepsut, something like that. A queen with a really difficult name. She established this whole scene. She was the first one to do it, and everyone followed her for 500 years. Everybody did the same thing. So it's just like, the Queen of Wands, an initiate, having initiative, doing something totally different than this stuff, and being influential for 500 years. Everybody repeated what she did thereafter, until the whole grand burial thing sort of fell apart and wasn't even part of the continuing culture, was what I was getting out of things. So if you had just shown the valley, you could have even maybe artistically made it look like part of the feminine genitalia while keeping it realistic to the site, which is a valley. It's a cleft. And that could have been the queen. This could have been the king or whatever. This could also have been the king. But this could also have been a knight, because what they were talking about is on the walls of these tombs were tales of the travels that people were going through as they went into the afterlife. So apparently there was a journey that was full of trials, and these trials were being depicted on the walls of the burial sites as you went down the tunnel into the chamber where the tomb was. So yeah, there are some difficulties here. So this is how they had them. Queen in the city of the sun god. The king in the Valley of the Kings, which initially sounds like it makes a lot of sense, except for the fact that there's more than one, and goodness knows a king would want themselves to be primary. And this, just because of the achievement that it is, and that it's achievement built on other things, and this isn't going anywhere, this should have been the king. So there's all kinds of issues with the court cards. But anyway, about the Great Pyramid of Khufu, which all of the documentaries were not referring to Cheops, they were referring to Khufu, which supposedly there's the same people. That the building of this pyramid unified the people, and which would be a great legacy for a king, right? To create a project. Essentially, it's a grand project, which seems appropriate for a King of Wands, that unified people in the building of it. It gave people something to do during the flood season. It was the flood season itself that made the transfer of materials to build it doable. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been possible. The floods actually made it possible to bring materials across water inland, almost right up to the pyramid, which it wouldn't have otherwise. In the drier season, they couldn't do that. So it was something that was built over such a long period because they could only work on it periodically. So so again, interesting, all interesting. Interesting information, regardless of how I feel about how they've assigned certain things to, to the cards. And for the most part, given the project that this deck is, the Sacred Sites Tarot is, they do quite a remarkable job, actually. It's easy to admire. It's like, God, I didn't even know about this thing, let alone adding it to the Nurages. Of course, it's part of, it's Sicilian, so it's part of, I'm pretty sure that's what it's on the island of Sicily. So the Italians would know about it, and they would be more connected to the Mediterranean and things going on there than I would be in the US. Although certainly people everywhere are fascinated by the Egyptians, the ancient Egyptians. So there it is. The suit of wands. One more suit to go. The suit of swords. I will be back. The rate things are going right now, probably a month. I'll be back in a while with that. And then we'll be giving the Sacred Sites Tarot a rest until December, when I will pull it out and see if I can actually do readings with it. All right, everybody, take care. Bye-bye.